Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, here with a cartoonist today. You may know him from his work in The New Yorker or from his satirical comic strip, Too Much Coffee Man. My pleasure to welcome Shannon Wheeler to the show. Shannon, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start off with Too Much Coffee Man. I want to talk about your Substack as well. You have a very personal story going on there, but I think, as I said, most people probably know you from Too Much Coffee Man or from your work in The New Yorker, as I said. So I know you did a Kickstarter for the Too Much Coffee Man that collected the original strips and what have you. So tell us a little bit about that and about the response and how the campaign went for you for the Kickstarter.
The Kickstarter was great. Those things are really stressful, but the support was really solid. And yeah, the first book I've done, and now I did a second Kickstarter with a second book, and that one I'm finishing up. It's taking a little bit longer than I wanted. All the tariffs and politics stress me out, but that one's coming along. Yeah, it was really good experience. Really nice to connect with people on a individual level and feel the support. That it was just surprising that people are still out there and liking it.
Yeah, in a way, with what's going on in the world, you mentioned tariffs and politics and that. It's almost like we're all a little bit more Too Much Coffee Man now than we were when it first came out, right? We're all a little more neurotic. We're all a little more stressed out. We're all. I mean, I know I'm a lot more politically aware now because I sort of have to be.
Yeah.
So when you look back on when you first created Too Much Coffee Man and you were telling these stories, like the ideas were sort of outlandish and now it's sort of become reality. You ever think about that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think I was listening to the commentary on a Simpsons, one of the early Simpsons, and they talked about doing like Homer goes to the Quickie Mart and gets an ice cream, and they were trying to make this ridiculous ice cream. So they have like triple fudge chocolate, and in the commentary, they're pointing out that now that's just a normal flavor that you get a triple fudge chocolate. And I think about that. That kind of sums it up. Of like, yeah, you try to do this extreme, outlandish thing, and then it becomes like, it didn't go far enough.
Yeah, life
So.
ends up catching up, which is so interesting. Well, you mentioned being able to connect one-on-one, and so in terms of deciding to do Too Much Coffee Man as kind of a crowd-funded and get directly to your audience and sort of build a community, was it about, because I'm sure you could have taken this out to any number of publishers, but was it about
Mhm.
building that community and communicating directly with your fans? Was that what factored into you crowdfunding it?
Um, a couple things. I mean, one, I just wanted to have a book that I would have at conventions, so that I would have an evergreen with publishers. Generally, I have to, it's oh, I got to order this book, and then a month ahead of time, and then they'll give you, I don't know, 60 off or something like that. But and so you're paying, $5 or $10 a book, and then you're selling it for 20 bucks, 10 to 20 bucks, and then you're always giving a bunch away and then discounting other people. So I don't know. I thought if I printed it myself, I would just have a stockpile for conventions. Then I would feel fine about giving them away. I don't, yeah, a little bit was it was just a control issue and just having, and then it'll go out of print.
Right.
Um, like a bunch of the things I've done with other publishers have gone out of print. And that's frustrating. And you can bring them back in print, but it'll be 6 months before we.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe cutting out some of that red tape. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But you did mention, some people discovering it for the first time, but also longtime fans of it coming back. So it sounds like it's had a good reception, and people are happy to have it in their hands in kind of one volume,
Yeah,
one place.
yeah. One place, and then also I got to. I wrote. I didn't get to. I made myself. I wrote essays that were contextualizing some of the content. So I was able to say, yeah, I did this Japanese bootleg T-shirt, and this is this is what I did, and this is why I did it, and how I did it. In short, I wanted to use kanji on a t-shirt because that made a good design, but I felt disingenuous doing that, like it was appropriation or something. But then I thought if it was bootlegged in Japan, then I could use kanji or then it kanji would be used on it. And then I thought, well, what if I just said it was bootlegged? And so
Yeah.
I just did this kind of,
Yeah.
and I got to write this whole essay explaining this joke, like a magician, like, oh
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
the rabbit, the false bottom in the hat, this is how it works. And which I'm like the worst magician in that sense.
Well, for anybody that's not familiar with Too Much Coffee Man, you have people that come up to you at cons and haven't heard of it. Do you have your pitch nailed down by now, I would imagine?
No, but I do have there's no such thing as too much coffee man. And then I say, oh, he's a fictional character. Ha ha ha. Yeah, there's a number, there's basically four jokes that people say over and over again. And I've got four retorts for each. Yeah, it's just boring. Um, the funny thing though at conventions is like when people walk by, the guy will always point at it and say it out loud to his girlfriend. And I don't, and I worked at the boom table once, and the only other book that was like that, people would point at Planet of the Apes and say that title out loud. So it's like Too Much Coffee Man and Planet of the Apes. I don't know if it's the rhythm of it's just fun to say. But it's a weird, yeah, nobody walks by and says peanuts.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
and on the table at Boom, there were 50 different books, and that's the one, Planet of the Apes. That's the one they would say, and I don't know. It's just a funny. I don't. There's no point to that.
No, that's really. I find that really interesting. I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, maybe it's because we all know somebody who drinks too much coffee, and the fact that hey, that's a great title for a book. It's a great character. So anyway, everybody, if you haven't checked out Too Much Coffee Man, definitely check it out. It's worth your time. And more campaigns to come, Shannon, to collect the remainder.
Yeah. So what I did is the first nine books, which are really seven because I skipped two issues when I was doing it. I knew I wanted to have this arc, storytelling arc. I broke the story into three bits where I have a guy creating Too Much Coffee Man, a guy reading Too Much Coffee Man, and then the comic book itself. And I wanted it to land on the guy reading it becomes homeless and sort of fails. So he has a downward trajectory, and then the cartoonist becomes more successful, so he has an upward trajectory. Um, and then Too Much Coffee Man, I just allowed it to get weirder and weirder and become more surreal. And I wanted it to land on that ninth issue, but I was drawing the sixth issue, and it was just really boring because it was like, connecting the numbers. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I skipped two issues. It's just so that I went to the ninth. So anyway, yeah, I did those, and then at the same time, I was doing a whole bunch of mini comics, and I was doing some cartoons for newspapers. And so the second book is all the mini comics and the odds and ends. And again, I'll write a bunch of. That's what's making me go slow is writing these stupid essays that I've obligated myself to,
Yeah.
explaining jokes and like, yeah, this is this is why it was funny in the 90s, but maybe you wouldn't get it now.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were saying. Now it's a little too close to reality. But where you can find out what Shannon has going on, everybody, and get a feel for his work and a lot of his past work he's been sharing and new stuff, especially his book that he's working on right now that deals with his father is on his Substack. So I'll put a link in the show notes. You can go and click there and go and subscribe to the Substack and follow Shannon's work because he's just brilliant and it's laugh out loud funny. But in terms of this project, my father, which I've read what's been on Substack so far, and eventually this will be once Shannon's finished will be collected in a print volume. But this is such a personal story. I mean, this is basically your story and your relationship with your father, Shannon. So talk to us a little bit about it and why you decided now was the right time to tell this story and to tell it through your art.
Some of my dad died, and I have a real, you know, difficult relationship with my dad. Like on one hand, he was a real figure, He started a commune in the 60s, following the footsteps of a folk singer named Lou Gottlieb, who had a commune. And then Gottlieb's commune was shut down, and my dad opened up his commune. Um, and so growing up, my mom and I would go up there quite often. And yeah, I don't know. He's an interesting figure, and he sort of lived through a lot of things that are real emblematic of our cultural changes. And so it's about it's about my dad, and it's about myself and my relationship with my dad, but then also how culture changes, and just how different. There's a real culture shock. Like if you like what they thought was okay in the 60s and 70s is just kind of mind-boggling for now. And I think it's really important before we have too much confidence in our current culture. I think 10 or 20 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and have the same feelings that we did about the culture of the 60s. And so a little bit it's just that of saying, hey, don't have too much self-confidence in where you are now because it's going to change again. But yeah, it's a way to resolve some of the my feelings about my dad. I was always trying to, a lot of it is me trying to please him. And so um, me being a cartoonist, and he would say, "Oh, you should." A friend of mine, he's a cartoonist for the New Yorker. Get in the New Yorker. That's where you know. And then I do, and then um, and then my dad's like, "Oh, do a cover." That's when you've really. So there's this constant,
Yeah, moving
trying
the
to.
goalposts.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, it'll be nice to resolve some of those feelings and to feel happier with my father again. Um, but mostly it's the cultural issues that really, I think that's what's a really interesting, that's what has some carryover. And then, and like my mom took us to see uh, uh, Jim Jones, who did the Guyana Temple. He was very popular in California in the 70s. And so I have memories of seeing Jim Jones. And I actually had, there's Kool-Aid, I mean, it wasn't Kool-Aid, it's actually grape drink, but
Right.
out by the kids' corral. And so, like we didn't have sugar in my house. So I was like downing as much of this stuff as possible. And then, so now whenever people say, don't drink the Kool-Aid, it's like, yeah, I drank as much of that Kool-Aid as I could.
As
And
you
like it
can.
actually, like the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit because I'm like, yeah, most of the people that I saw at the at this get together, this where the preaching, most of them died horribly, and so yeah, I'm 2 degrees from this, 1 degree from this event, and that's another one of those cultural things where at the time people thought, and it was what he was preaching was about love and togetherness and anti-racism, but then it went into obviously a super dark place. So it that's something I want to just talk about is like that cultural, some of those cultural things.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd been there on a different day, things could have turned out much, much worse. That's
Well,
that's yeah, it's a little scary.
yeah, a little bit. I mean, thankfully, my mom was has always been very curious about things, and but she's not a follower, so she didn't we were never like on the fence about, oh, should we join this
Right.
temple, should
Yeah,
we.
yeah.
It was just like, oh, here's this thing that's happening, let's check this out. And that's yeah, that's something that I've gotten from my mom, where I really am interested in what's happening.
Well, I'm sure that as you've been going back through and kind of exploring the memories of your father and the complexity of the relationship, as you said, that it's been painful a little bit, but probably some fond memories as well. So
Yeah.
processing that through art is really interesting, and I think, like you said, it'll help with closure and healing. But the other part of this is it does need to be entertaining too, right? Like for you, obviously to be a personal project, you'll go back and look at it. But at the end of the day, you're a cartoonist, so you're telling a story, but you're entertaining and you're being very vulnerable and inviting us into your world. Um, for this particular project, striking that balance, um, has it been harder? Has it been tougher? More of a challenge to make sure, hey, I have something to say, and I think it's important to explore, the shift in culture along with the relationship with your father. But I also have to entertain. My fans are going to expect a certain level of entertainment. Any thought to that, or has it been just a little more unconscious, and you kind of like riding a bike, right? You've been doing this so long, you just jump on and go.
The, yeah, yeah, a little bit. My mind is going to vomit up as a coping mechanism, I think, where I just look at things through humor, albeit dark humor, or that's just like, so I'm trying to write this straight thing of like, oh, here's a funeral. And so I'm trying to do this sad moment, but then I can't help but have some kind of little twist on the thing that I'm really having to work on tendency to end every page on a badump bump because my training has always been
Right.
these comic strips,
Yeah.
and a friend of mine who's helping, I'm sharing pages and he's editing. He's like, "No, let it breathe. You're moving it too fast, and don't end on a beat, like." End on a hang so that you have the beat on the next page, so you get a page turn. That's going to make people so I'm trying to rework some of these things that I've internalized as a way to tell storytelling, and it's great. I like when I shifted from doing comic strips into doing New Yorkers, that was a similar thing where it's like, okay, here's my instinct is to do over explain it in a comic strip and have this rhythm, but in a New Yorker, you remove a lot of that and you want to go for a minimalism and you're creating narrative, but it's implied narrative. So a good New Yorker strip has a narrative that's implied of like something that's led up to a moment and then a narrative that follows. It's an implied narrative that follows the image that you're drawing, and those are the ones that really sing. And that took a year or 2 years to learn just the basics of changing my storytelling to fit their template. Um, and I think it's really good to look at yourself and look at your assumptions on how you're telling stories and then rework them. So yeah, I don't know if it's fans, like I don't think about the reader all that much, I don't think. I mean, it's mostly like, does does this feel good? Like, is it feeling right? Like, did I hit this note that I want to hit? And then, um, yeah, it's a real internal, and you know when you do it, it's
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. That comes from the years of experience doing it. When you've nailed it, right? But also I love the fact that yeah, you are shifting things up a little bit and telling this maybe paced in a little bit different way because it the best artists never stop learning and challenging and growing and changing, and then that's kind of how you get your best work, right? If you're
Yeah.
drawing and that's also why eventually they stopped doing it, right? Like Gary Larson with Farside, right? Like eventually he's just like I could keep doing it, and or Bill Watterson with Calvin and Hobbes. I
Right.
could keep doing it. I'm
I'm
phoning
gonna
it
go do
in, and I can
watercolors. Or,
yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
gonna go do play jazz now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I could keep cashing the check, but it's not really in service to the art. So I love that.
Duchamp is the one who I always like, the modernist artist who invented modern art, and then at age, I don't know, 32 or so, he's like, I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
gonna just
yeah,
play chess for the rest of my life. And
yeah.
you know,
People are like, wait, what? You can
we
make
want more.
millions. Yeah,
We want more nudes descending the staircase. We want a
yeah,
sequel to that, like nude on the ballroom floor. Or something. He's like, nah.
yeah. I'm done. Yeah, I'm over it. So.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I love about, whether it's because this is a different thing, everybody. Cartooning a little bit different than comic art, and obviously I've had cartoonists on before, had a lot of comic creators on before, and it's a little bit of a different muscle. But regardless, it's about evoking emotion. But the other thing that I love, whether you're working more in the traditional Western comics or more in the cartooning side of things, is kind of the peer groups and hearing the stories and how much respect you guys have for one another. So I don't think I haven't mentioned this on the show before, but when I got a chance to meet Shannon, at San Diego Comic Con for the first time this last year is because of the conversation that I had with Eric Drucker, who came on and was talking about the second book in his City trilogy, which was absolutely amazing and is a fantastic book, Naked City. So, in terms of kind of getting a chance to hang out with Eric or hang out with other cartoonists and talk about the work and that sort of thing, have you discussed this particular work with any of them and kind of compared notes about, hey, here's what I'm working on, here's how I'm doing it, and I mean, is there that sense? I have much more of an idea on the comic book side, and I know the creators. Oftentimes I'm friends and part of that group, and I'll hear them, talking about the nuts and bolts of it. But I'm not as familiar on the cartooning side. So, is there like a peer group where you guys like compare notes, how you're working, and ask for advice, maybe if you're stuck, that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When I started cartooning in Austin, Texas, we had a peer group, and it was, like Chris Ware and Robert Rodriguez. Um, Robert's gone on to do movies. Chris is, he just designed a stamp for the post office. Um, but the talent that was there was astounding. Like I moved from Berkeley, and I got there, and I thought and then all of a sudden I'm going out and drawing with these other people, and I had to up my game a lot. They, I, I was using rapidographs, and they were all like, "No, you really need to use a flexible nib like a Hunt 108." And so just it 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 was very supportive. It was very critical, but very supportive. And then the New Yorker, um, Matt Diffie, when I met him, and that's how I got in there, is because of his support and him saying, this is how a New Yorker cartoon works. And you need to, and I was like, hey, I'm getting published in the Onion. I do this, I do that, like I know what I'm doing, and I don't need your advice. But I thought either I feel that way and I have this arrogance, or I trust him and make myself vulnerable to his advice. And I just decided the generosity that he had for being willing to talk to me about this stuff and look at my comics objectively. It I really had to tear down what I was doing and then rebuild it in a new language. And what people have said is that, like, oh, you're selling out because you're doing what they're wanting. I was like, no, this is like I was playing CBGBs and playing punk rock, and now I'm going to Blue Note, and I'm getting to play jazz. Like I
Yeah.
need to learn the like what is it they do and how do they do it? And so yeah, the generosity of that, and now yeah, like hang out with Drucker, that was amazing. That was the first time I met him, and in my head I had a whole personality kind of carved out of like who he is, and I was completely wrong. I loved it.
Yeah, he just exudes this coolness. He's like I told you when we talked later, I was like he's kind of like a character
Yeah,
in one of his own books. He's just so. I mean, you can't explain it unless you meet him. If you've met him, then you know what I'm talking about. But he's just so him. He's just so himself, and so humble, and so talented.
yeah.
It's just yeah, what a fantastic guy.
And it's great. It was, yeah, and all the New Yorker cartoonists have been really supportive and really just inclusive of like new people come in, and it's like, hey, you're doing this, like come hang out, come be with us and do this. Um, yeah, it's been it's a really privileged, which is weird to say privileged and inclusive on the same, but yeah, it's a great group of people, and I've been really lucky to have gone into this.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
part
and
of
then
it.
yeah, work on this.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, um, yeah, this book I was gonna just Chris Ross, he did the on the Bible that I did. He's helping me on edits, and he's saying, hey, this is what you're trying to do. You should read these two other books and figure out how to let the pacing work better. And then Andrew Iden, who did March, he's the one that's saying, don't stop with the punchline on every page. Like you need to, and I was like, I mean, it's just invaluable advice from people that are much smarter than myself. It's great.
Well, don't sell yourself short. I think it's just a lack of experience telling this type of story, and you'll 100% get there. And it'll probably be one of the situations where you'll look at the beginning of the book and the first few pages you did, and you'll look at the end, you'll be able to see your growth. Because I have total faith in you. Because what I was going to say is, when we talk about kind of I'll call it a brotherhood, the brotherhood of the cartoonists that have been published in the New Yorker, like super talented, in my experience, very passionate about art and
Yeah,
just so caring, right? Like, I mean, if you're doing cartoons
yeah,
in the New Yorker, you're not one of these non-empathetic people who can't, see the plight of others, right? I mean, if there's anything
right.
about the New Yorker, it is it takes sometimes and not just the cartoons, obviously, but the whole magazine. It takes a very objective and sometimes brutal look at who we are as a race, as a society, as a civilization. It doesn't really pull punches, and I think that's where we need to be right now with the state of the world. Too many people kind of have their head in the sand a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're fingers crossed, hoping for the best. And I'd rather have people that kind of take off the rose-colored glasses and see things for what they are, because then I feel like it engenders a little more empathy, and people are a little bit more willing to help each other out. Um, which seems like, okay, now we're getting far afield from what Shannon's on here to talk about. But I mean, that's the point. That's how it goes back to what he was saying earlier about this culture shift. And I completely agree with you, and I hadn't thought about it, but it's a real fascinating idea that 20 years from now we'll look back on this time and go, why did we allow that?
yeah, yeah. One of the pieces that I just finished writing is, I think it was first grade, maybe second grade. Um, I mean, this sounds like a horrible story, but um, one of the girls in my class was killed by her mom, and her mom was a survivor of the Holocaust, and and so that was a big, it was a, really upsetting for all the kids, whatever. And so we're trying to understand death and life and all the, and the teachers are all freaked out. And the mom killed the daughters, the dogs, and herself. And I asked my dad, I'm like, why, or my stepdad, who's Jewish, I said, why did this happen? And he explains like that the Nazis, this is who the Nazis were, this is what they did, and something broke in her at that time, and nobody knew it was broken. And and he said it just manifested, and he said that I'm like, why did the Nazis do this? And he said because they Hitler was so charismatic that even the Jews um, would seek Heil. There'd be a rally, and there was just, and I just remember thinking like, I will never seek Heil. Like that was like, I will not be brainwashed by them.
Right.
And that's part of the message. Like that's an echo thematically of like, I don't want to be taken in by the whatever current brainwashing is going on. So that, I mean, that's keying to what you're saying. And yeah, empathy is the biggest part of it, um, which is key
Yeah,
to it.
and thinking for yourself, like don't let anybody else tell you what you think or how to feel, because that's the other thing that we're talking about here in your art. We've talked about how personal it is for you and evoking emotion. As I've been, reading the pages, I shared with you about my father. I've been feeling things too, and that's where we're connected, right? In the emotion of it, that's what the best art does, is it makes us feel things and it makes us think. And so, um, yeah, I'm really looking forward to having this all collected and having it on my bookshelf. Do you have, and you may not because it is still kind of early days, but any sort of time frame that you're hoping to have it finished and then start looking at publishing?
I'm working on it every day, but I don't have a time frame. I've given myself, at first I was trying to do two things at once of thinking, how do I tell this story and how do I edit it into a book? I want to cut it down, keep it under 200 pages, do this and that. And then all of a sudden I was just um, overwhelmed. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to take these little stories because they all seem to relate to each other. I think. And then obviously it's how it relates to our current state and what we're dealing with now. Like that, I think that goes as implicit. And I just think I'm going to tell these stories and see how and not worry about when it's going to be done and what the overall arc is, and just let it, because it seems to, not worrying about that, it seems to be coming together. Like I was like that the girl, the suicide murder of the girl in my class, which I mean, even in that, like I couldn't help but make it sort of a funny little, I don't know, they planted this tree, um in memories, to memorialize her. And it's still there. I drive by it when I see my mom, like every time. It's like, oh, there's that tree, so
That's so
there's
weird.
so I'll be able to echo these things, but that not seek healing is a template of what's happening now. And then not my mom not joining the Jim Jones, like that's a way to not seek heil, is like, here's this, he's preaching love and togetherness and answers, and she's like, um, like we're fine here, we'll go see him.
Yeah, so a little bit of technical difficulties. Everybody, apologize for that. You won't have seen it, but
My battery.
yeah,
It's all me.
you'll notice Shannon's in a different spot now. Um, but we're getting ready to wind it up anyway. But I do like that idea of rather than kind of focusing on kind of the technical aspects of putting it together and telling the story, that you're just focusing on telling the story. And it'll take as
Yeah,
long as it takes, and maybe there ends up being more content on the Substack that actually makes it into the book or whatever, and maybe
definitely.
then maybe you do a later volume that has extra stuff or whatever. But just
Or
allowing
or
allowing
yeah,
the
or a
project to
weekly book.
breathe,
Yeah.
like you said,
Hmm.
I think is rather than kind of worrying about the nuts and bolts, uh, and maybe more so for this project because it is so personal,
Yeah.
to just focus on that part of it.
And there's all these little side notes that I just keep thinking are funny and interesting. And I want to tell all these little pieces. And a lot of it, I'm trying to not, some of these autobiographical books, memoirs that I've been reading, just they draw the main character is themselves and they're in every single panel. And I really want to do something that is about my father and like what he went through in deciding to open his land up and have a commune, and then the weird sex and drugs and idealism, and then the reality of it. There's just a lot of contradictions that I think it's a lot more interesting than what I've been through.
Well, your life seems pretty interesting to me. I'm sure your father's even more so, as you said. But yeah, I totally get it. Right? Like it seems a little less narcissistic to, and you may find comparisons or whatever, but parallels between your life and his and what have you. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to do it. And again, then you end up with different versions. Maybe you do like a quote unquote director's cut later on that has more of the extra
Hopefully, it's
stuff.
not Apocalypse Now where it gets worse. That's my
Yeah, yeah. Don't George Lucas it and add too much
right.
crazy stuff in it that it doesn't work. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Shannon. Again, everybody, there's a link in the show notes to the Substack where this story's going on, and you can see a lot of Shannon's other work, his Too Much Coffee Man stuff, the cartoons from New Yorker, and all sorts of other mini comics that he's done. It's a great place to go and give him a follow. And I'll also put a link to his website where you can go. You can actually buy work. You get original art from Shannon, which I mean, I can't believe how so many of these artists that work and cartoonists that have done work in the New Yorker. I can't believe how inexpensive their art is when I see other like comic art going for millions. Like I can't believe like Eric. We were just talking about Eric earlier. I can't believe I mean he did a fantastic sketch for me inside the front cover of the Naked City that I got, and I can't believe how inexpensive his art is. So I kind of feel the same way about yours. You're so talented, and again, that brotherhood of the New Yorker cartoonist and how it's really a snapshot in time, of where we are in society. Um, there's so much value in it, which I know is not always measured monetarily, but I say that to tell everybody, go visit the website, check it out. Maybe you'll see something you like. Maybe you want to buy some art there or some of Shannon's other work. So as we're winding down here, Shannon, again, I want to express my thanks. It's been fantastic chatting with you. Anything else you want to share with our audience? Anything else you want them to know?
No, I mean, just like the Substack, like subscribing to it, it really does support. It's giving me the room to do this. So I'm now, I don't feel the rush to get it done and meet a deadline, but more like, and like I said, I'm working on it every day, but I can't now. I can lean into it and be like, okay, I'm getting some income by doing this, and I can now do these little stories that I feel are relevant and that I like doing. And so, yeah, the support is invaluable, and I appreciate it a lot. So
fantastic. Well, go ahead.
That's it. It makes a difference, and I love it. It's
fantastic.
It's good.
Well, again, link in the show notes, everybody, to the Substack and to Shannon's website. Go there, support him, check out the work. I mean, and even if you decide it's not for you, it's definitely worth your while to go there and check it out, because maybe you know somebody else that would absolutely love it. Because I think a lot of what Shannon's doing has a lot of value. This kind of work, this kind of art makes a great gift as well, the holidays coming up. So, maybe you know somebody that you could gift the Substack to that would, really enjoy it. Maybe they have, a complicated relationship with their father or their mother or that sort of thing. I think, in a way we all do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll know, like when you read this stuff, you'll know. It'll pop in your head like, oh, I know this person would absolutely adore this stuff. So anyway, once again, Shannon, thanks so much for joining me. To everybody out there in the audience, whether you're checking us on YouTube or listening on the audio only podcast, we really appreciate you joining, and we'll talk to you next time.